Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Madisonville Marine, Skeeter, G3, Aqua Patio, Suncatcher, Hurricane, Polarcraft, Apex, Bullet, Sweetwater, Stingray. All brands carried by the one boat dealer you have to visit in East Tennessee. From bass boats to pontoons to deck boats, nobody else in East Tennessee can match the selection, prices, and customer service of Madisonville Marine. Check them out, madmarine.com, or go down Highway 411 north in Madisonville and see for yourself. Madisonville Marine. All right. Picking up with football, then we'll switch over to hoops here in a second. The SEC will have an 8-game league schedule, which we knew. The SEC is forcing teams to play a 9th game against one of the other Power 5 conferences, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12. But unlike the Big 10, for example, the SEC has said we will not force our teams to abandon FCS opponents. Everybody in the SEC, for the most part, plays an FCS team every season. The SEC says it's not going to bar that. Good idea or bad idea? Should they bar them?
Bad idea.
Bar them.
If you're not going to bar them, then make it be like Tennessee playing another in-state team just to have a reason to do it for justification. But other than that, no, get rid of them.
You know, and it's hard as far as the schedules are done to know that you're playing a quality, opponent from that level. If you're playing like a Montana or even an Appalachian State at their heyday, I don't have a problem with that. Look at Appalachian State upset Michigan. Georgia Southern has done some good things. But I think as a rule, you're better off just saying no if it's just going to be a cakewalk and a 70-to-something alumni homecoming victory.
Well, I mean, that's Florida had Georgia Southern last year, but
Exactly.
still, that's the exception to the rule, Mike.
If you want to get people to come to your stands and be in your stands and experience a live experience, give them opponents.
Yeah. Again, we keep going back to fan experience because you're trying to get people to come out to the games and buy tickets. This is another one I think that works into the fan experience. How many people are lining up? Oh boy, Chattanooga. You want to go see the Florida game? No, I'm really hunkering for that
For the
Chattanooga
Mocs.
game.
Yeah, the how much of a threat on the field they are really doesn't matter when you're talking about the fans. Not only for in the stands, but you're talking about TV ratings too, which the SEC network is going to be looking for as well.
That's not a bad point because you look at it. I mean, Arkansas State and Utah State are not going to be pushovers for Tennessee, and yet fans still aren't thrilled about that. They don't think it's going to be that big of a game.
And it's,
So
John, another thing too, it's tough to say the SEC can't go to a 9-game schedule when you look at some of the teams that are being played.
The issue is schools like Mississippi State want to put an FCS opponent on there, want to cap it at 8 league teams so they can guarantee themselves 6
Vanderbilt.
wins in a bowl.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Not all SEC coaches are in favor of an early signing period. However, they said if one comes, they all agree it should be on the Monday after Thanksgiving. We hear this talked about every year. I personally do not think you will ever have an early signing period in football because you're never going to get everybody to agree on this. Anybody disagree that you will have an early signing period in football at some point? This is one of those never bets.
Yeah, I never say never. I mean, you know that.
I'm saying it, never.
And I think you take the burden off the Postal Service a little bit because some of these schools send out 277 pieces of mail to one recruit or more. If you have a kid, and Mark Rick said this at the SEC meetings, that is a diehard Georgia fan or a diehard, and that's where he's going to go, I have no problem giving him the chance to get it done early.
This is another one, though, where the little schools are the ones who are complaining because if you're sitting at Alabama or Georgia, you're going to get kids locked in early. Also, if you're in a state with great in-state recruiting. Now, this would not be something that typically would benefit Tennessee as compared to a Florida or a Georgia, but still, okay,
I think that's a perfect time to do it the Monday after Thanksgiving.
Well, I'll say this: if I'm an athlete, a prospect, I would not want to sign early because you got coaching changes. Look in basketball.
Yes.
In basketball, you have the early signing period, and you got 4 Conzo Martin signees going somewhere else.
Yeah.
So you don't have that.
and
in
Donnie
football.
Tyndall's guys and
Yeah.
the guys that Gonzo inherited Cal, they all move.
I think you will see it, and here's why, because I'm going to take my cue from Mike Sly. The fact that he is having his guys vote on a what if it happens, means that he probably has a feeling that it could be coming.
But this is about the 10th year in a row it's come up at SEC meetings. I mean, it's every single year.
But have they decided on a contingency plan?
Not on a
before?
date, no. Right. But, okay. Next question. The SEC a few years ago created a rule because Jeremiah Masoli transferred into Ole Miss from Oregon the SEC said we're not going to have any more of these grad school transfers where you're a senior, you've graduated, you're coming to this school because they offer a major that your old school didn't. We're not going to do that anymore. And then they gave waivers every time somebody wanted this. So basically, they created a rule and then gave it no teeth. Now they've voted just to get rid of the rule altogether. You're not going to have to worry about this quickly. Do you care? Because, I mean, you never saw this rule anyway.
No. And I think it's a good rule. It
Let them
if
transfer
it helps
in.
kids.
Yeah.
Mike, you're big into this.
Yeah, it encourages kids to get a degree. So that's isn't that the number one thing they talk about? So reward them by letting them go somewhere.
All right, next one. We talked about this a few weeks ago that the ACC is looking at experimenting with a 30-second shot clock in basketball. The SEC is thinking about doing that in some of its exhibition games this year. Instead of a 35-second clock, a 30-second clock. So that one could be part of it. But here's a bigger rule change that was proposed by Andy Kennedy. He says college basketball, or basketball in general, is the only sport that takes its best players and ejects them from the game for anything other than fighting and that kind of thing. Foul outs. It's a good point. I mean, people pay money to come see the stars, and then a guy fouls out and you miss him. His idea is this. Guys who with 5 fouls stay on the floor, but any foul they commit after their 5th, the other team gets 2 shots and the ball. So it's up to the coach to decide if he's worth playing or not. It's not going to happen, but thoughts on it as an idea.
I would really like to see some experiment and see if this would work, because not only do guys they foul out, you don't see him. Jarnell Stokes gets his second foul
he's on the bench.
3 minutes into the first half. You don't see him for the rest of the first half. So
Good point.
I would like to see some, if there's a way to make that work.
Before I did something that drastic, as a former basketball player, I would rather see it be a 6 foul.
Yep.
If you're going to change it, make it 6 fouls and see how the coaches adjust to that before you start doing all this other stuff.
Big East experimented with that idea one year and didn't go back to it. So it must not have worked in their view. But I agree. Try something. Thoughts on this?
Don't like it. I mean, just don't change the stinking game.
Okay.
I mean, why not put up goalposts and you can kick a field goal?
All right.
Yeah, it's a silly idea, and it'll never happen anyway. But I'm with Chuck. I think adding a 6th foul, and the NBA should go to 7 as well. Just add another foul to keep those guys in the game.
Keep
Okay.
adding fouls.
Yeah.
48 fouls. I say I'm kind of like Mike. Let's see what it looks like. Just 2 shots in the ball after every foul committed by a guy over 5. Wisely, the SEC switched its hoops format. You've heard us talk about that on this show. I wrote it on Monday on Mr. SEC that the SEC needs to do this. Tuesday, they did it. They went for, and it's because of what we've talked about here and what was written on Mr. SEC. They have switched from the one permanent opponent in basketball, still an 18-game basketball schedule, but instead of one permanent opponent, each team's now going to have 3. I would presume that one of Tennessee's additional, they've had Vanderbilt as their home and home. Now Kentucky will be added back in, is my guess. So you'll have a home and away with Kentucky every year, and then some other school. And as you joked, maybe it'll be Auburn and Bruce Pearl. But I like this. Obviously, I like this. I'll call for it. I think they've made the right decision here. You're just bringing in more. You're keeping a lot more of the traditional rivals in the SEC alive.
Yeah, it's much improved. And when you're worrying about attendance, and they are in basketball as well, making sure you have the right home games and those home and homes, I think that's important. And it's a natural fit to add those two.
We assume from a Tennessee standpoint that Kentucky will be one of them, but every school would like to have Kentucky because of the gate it brings.
Yeah.
So
7.
there may
Well,
be some lobbying going on.
There shouldn't be. It should be based on history, which this league needs to keep hold of. There are a lot of rivalries that got nuked in this. Florida, Georgia have played 200 times in basketball. They're not permanent foes. Give me a break. I mean, that's going to be one that needs to be in there. Alabama, LSU have played about 200 times. They're not in there, so that'll have to be 12.
Heaven forbid if you went back to the division format that you never should have abandoned, you'd still have that.
The SEC still went to they announced some SEC tournament sites upcoming, future sites. Here we go. Nashville, obviously, is 3 out of every 4 years. That's the new semi-home, but they awarded St. Louis this week. I do not have a problem with that because you've got 4 SEC schools, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Kentucky, and Vandy, who are within a 6-hour drive of St. Louis. Tampa, Florida is the only SEC school within a 7-hour drive of Tampa. That's a horrible decision. It was poorly attended the last time they were there. Mike, your final take on that one?
New Orleans.
Put it in New Orleans and Tampa. I'm going to bet you that Atlanta gets 2026 in their new Oculus, their new stadium down there. All right, when we come back, Tennessee's basketball roster and some comments from Bruce Pearl about UT and about Conzo Martin. Come on back.